My name is Jessica Miller, and I'm 34 years old, living in Denver, Colorado. At that Christmas dinner, under the dazzling golden lights reflecting off crystal glasses and the cheerful chatter of relatives, my mother suddenly turned to me, looked me straight in the eye, and said the words, "I will never forget. You are the most useless child I have." The air shattered. Forks froze midair. Conversations died. I sat there, frozen, feeling like someone had just crushed my heart in front of the whole family. It wasn't just an insult. It was the final blow to years of futile attempts to earn recognition. I tell this story not to complain, but to remind you that sometimes the deepest fractures in a family don't come from outsiders, but from the very hands that are supposed to be closest. So, what would you do if your own mother chose to humiliate you in front of everyone? Would you swallow the pain in silence? Or would you stand up and turn the whole table upside down with truths they've always tried to bury? My name is Jessica Miller, 34, a marketing manager in Denver. I work hard, I pay my bills, and I've built a life that's mine. But inside me, it's never felt warm. By my side is Brian, 36, a high school history teacher. To my mother, he's just a man with a steady paycheck, not nearly successful enough. To me, he's an entire world. Patient, attentive, someone who's never once made me feel like I had to compete for affection. And then there's my family, picture perfect, at least from the outside. My mother, Margaret, always stern, her voice carrying both command and judgment. My brother, Daniel, a surgeon in Houston, her eternal pride, mentioned and praised at every meal. My sister, Emily, a lawyer in Chicago, coddled since childhood, forgiven for mistakes that, if they had been mine, would have been branded as failures. In that house, all the light was poured onto them. I, the middle child, learned to sit quietly on the margins, watching every ounce of attention pass me by. Growing up, Daniel was placed on the highest pedestal. When he won a state academic award, Mom wrote letters to every relative. When he was accepted into medical school, we threw a huge party. I sat in the corner, listening to her repeat, "My son will become a surgeon, saving thousands of lives." Each time, I felt myself fading further into the shadow. Emily was different, but no less bitter. She drove my mother's car before she was old enough and scratched the door. Instead of scolding her, Mom pulled her into her arms and said, "You're still young. You'll learn." If it had been me, I'd have been locked in my room for a week. I was never allowed to be still young. I was never allowed to make mistakes. In that family, Daniel was the pride. Emily was the jewel. And I was only the invisible point of comparison, existing solely so my mother could remind me that there were children more worthy than me. Since I was 16, I worked part-time at a bookstore, not because we needed the money, but because I thought if I could support myself, she'd look at me differently. I saved every paycheck to buy her gifts. A silk scarf, she once said, looked nice. When I gave it to her, she smiled for a minute, before boasting that Daniel had bought her perfume and Emily had given her a dress. But I didn't stop. In college, I studied, tutored, worked extra shifts. I graduated with honors, got a competitive internship, and later finished school with praise from my professors. Yet, whenever I shared good news, it was brushed off. "Oh, that's fine. Did you hear Daniel just published another research paper?" It felt like running a marathon, only to find no one waiting at the finish line. I had pushed myself to the edge for their recognition. But in my mother's eyes, I would always be the lesser child. I still remember that winter morning when my father needed heart surgery. No one else. I was the first one my mother called. I grabbed my coat and drove 100 miles in a snowstorm. I sat 6 hours in a cold corridor outside the operating room, coffee gone cold, heart pounding. Daniel was in Houston. Emily was in Chicago. Both sent short texts. "Hope it goes well." And me, the lesser child, was the only one there. No one asked how far I'd driven, what I'd abandoned at work, or how I swallowed the fear. Then came the SUV. My mother called. "I need your help." The old car broke down. I said yes out of habit. For 2 years straight, I transferred $1,800 every month. I gave up dinners out, stopped buying new clothes, moved to a cramped apartment. I watched the words "payment successful" appear, breathing out a shaky sigh, knowing I'd scrape by again. Meanwhile, my mother drove that gleaming SUV to parties, flaunting a new handbag, bragging about Daniel and Emily. Not once did she mention me. That car became the perfect symbol of my place in the family. I was the invisible engine paying to keep it running. But when it rolled proudly down the street, no one cared to look back and see who had fueled it. Emily called me late one night, crying, "Sis, I have no other way. The bar exam fee is $3,500. If I miss this, everything I've worked for is gone." I wanted to refuse. But when I heard her sob, "If I don't have you, I have no one," my heart clenched. I sent the money. Weeks later, she posted a picture online. "The future starts now." No one knew that behind that smile were nights I ate instant noodles to make up for the money I'd sent her. Daniel was different. That pain cut deeper. My golden boy brother was drowning in student loan debt. When the loans neared default, my mother called, "Jessica, your brother can't let this get out. It would ruin his reputation. You have to help him, just this once." I sat frozen, staring at the $5,000 I'd saved over 3 years, the down payment on a tiny apartment with a balcony where I could grow a few pots of flowers. That dream was the only thing that made the coldness of my family bearable. But with one click, it was gone. Daniel never knew. He still sat proudly at family dinners, soaking in the praise. No one mentioned the person who quietly paid off that debt. No one noticed that to keep his perfect image intact, I buried my own smallest, most fragile dream. After 7 relentless years of work, I finally touched the title I had chased since my internship days: marketing manager. Those 7 years were filled with nights I stayed behind alone in the office, harsh fluorescent light falling over the keyboard, projects revised until the letters wore thin. When my director announced my promotion, I sat there stunned, torn between tears and laughter. Not because of the pay raise, but because for the first time in years, someone saw me, really saw me. Not long after, Brian took me to the Grand Canyon. That afternoon, standing at the edge of the cliffs, the sun blazing red, he knelt down, pulling a small box from his coat pocket. He had spent $4,500 on it, not to flaunt wealth, but to tell me I was worthy of something lasting. "Will you marry me?" he asked. I choked up instantly. Never in my life had I been placed at the very center like this. I nodded. And in that moment, the Grand Canyon was no longer just a natural wonder. It was the place where I knew I was chosen, loved, not for what I sacrificed, but simply for being me. For the first time in many years, I felt as if I had stepped out from the invisible shadow. This Christmas would be the first time I walked into my parents' house without feeling small. I pictured the moment I would share my promotion, place the ring on the table, and my mother's eyes would finally light up for me. I had waited my whole life for this, to be recognized by my family as someone of value. That house in the Denver suburbs glowed like a scene from a Christmas movie. Snow piled thick outside, but inside, golden light spilled from strings of bulbs. The living room was lavishly decorated with a 9-foot tree, red and gold ornaments twinkling, and the old silver star on top still shining. The smell of cinnamon, baked apples, and butter drifted through the house. I walked in carrying the boxes of gifts I had spent weeks preparing. For Daniel, a high-end leather suitcase with his name engraved inside. For Emily, a thick photo album compiling 10 years of family memories. And for my mother, I hand-knitted a turquoise scarf, a color she once said matched her eyes. When I placed the gifts under the tree, my heart pounded. Not because of their value, but because of the naive hope that this might be the year I finally saw recognition in my mother's eyes. It took her less than a minute to turn my anticipation into mockery. Her eyes swept over the red dress I had chosen so carefully. "Jessica, that dress looks cheap. How many times have I told you red does nothing for your skin? Look at you. You look completely out of place." Then she turned to Emily. "Now look at her. That $800 dress, so elegant, so refined. Emily, you really know how to make me proud." Emily tilted her head, a satisfied smile on her lips. Daniel didn't look up from his phone. The entire room was silent. Not a single person spoke up. I sat still, hands clasped tightly, forcing my face to remain unchanged. But inside, every word felt like a knife reopening an old scar. When the clinking of silverware subsided, I took a deep breath. I have something I'd like to share with everyone. I smiled, trying to steady my voice. After 7 years of hard work, I've been promoted to marketing manager. For a few seconds, the room was dead quiet. Then a few relatives began clapping, small, but enough to make my throat tighten. My father set down his fork, leaned toward me, and said, "I'm proud of you, Jessica." Those words echoed through me like a gentle melody. My grandmother nodded slowly, her eyes moist, a tender, patient smile revealing all her love. But when I saw my mother's reaction, the joy inside me plummeted. She sat there, calm to the point of coldness, cutting into her turkey as if she'd just heard something trivial. No congratulations. No smile. Not even a glance. Only silence. Heavy, suffocating, cruel than any insult. In the very moment I should have felt recognized, I slid back into the familiar darkness of being disregarded. When I finished announcing my engagement, the atmosphere sank further. I clutched the ring box, trying to hold on to the fragile warmth from my father's smile. Then my mother set down her fork and knife, lifted her head, and delivered the cold line. "Jessica, I have to say it. You are the most useless child I have." The air shattered. I sat there, stunned, as if all sound and sight around me had been pulled far away. In my ears, only her words echoed. The most useless child. All the years of effort, all the silent sacrifices, reduced to 4 words. I felt stripped bare, laid out on a table with my humiliation dissected. No protection left. In that silence, a fire flared up beneath the ashes I had buried for 30 years. Every time I had stayed silent, every time I had swallowed tears, every sacrifice I had never mentioned, all of it surged into my chest and erupted. I heard the scrape of my chair. Heads turned. I stood tall, gripping the edge of a table. I locked eyes with my mother. And for the first time in my life, I didn't turn away. Tonight, I will not be silent. I turned my phone screen so everyone could see. For the past 2 years, every single month, I've sent $1,800 to cover the SUV my mother drives to her parties. Yes, that shiny new car everyone praises. It runs on my money. For $1,200, my father's heart surgery. I sat 6 hours in a freezing corridor. And where were Daniel and Emily? Busy with their brilliant careers. It was me who drove him there. Me who emptied my account. Then there was Emily. She called me sobbing, begging for $3,500 to sit for the bar exam. I knew she'd just spent the summer in Europe, but I still sent it.
Why?
Because I thought if she achieved what she wanted, Mom would be happy. And maybe then she'd stop looking at me with contempt. And the last $5,000, the money I saved over 3 years, the money I planned to use as a down payment for a small apartment, my only dream of having a place of my own gone, just so Daniel wouldn't default on his student loans. He sits there, still hailed as the successful doctor, while I bury my dream of a home. All of it, just to protect this family's perfect image. I lifted my head, and I know that after tonight, no one can ever again pretend I did nothing for this family. The Bank of Jessica is officially closed as of today. The words rang out firm and solid. I turned to my mother. She sat frozen, her hands trembling. My father turned to her, his voice rough. "Margaret, how long has this been going on? You let your daughter carry all this, while you kept saying she was useless?" My grandmother leaned forward. "Enough, Margaret. I've sat here and listened to you humiliate Jessica for years. But tonight it ends. This girl has carried more for this family than everyone else at this table combined. If she is useless, then tell me, what do you call useful?" Daniel sat frozen, his face pale. "Jessica, you did all of that for me?" Emily shot up. "No, that's not true. She's making it up." My grandmother slammed her hand on the table. "Enough, Emily. Jessica is the pillar of this family. Not you, not Daniel, and certainly not anyone who only takes from her sacrifices. The room was dead silent. I walked out into the biting cold of Christmas night. The phone vibrated, Mom calling again and again. I let it ring. The next night, my father called. Jessica, I'm sorry. I was wrong. All these years, I thought silence kept the peace. I let you be belittled right in front of me, and I didn't protect you. I truly regret it. I closed my eyes, tears spilling. That admission that I was finally heard made my heart tremble. When I cut off the flow of money, a space opened before me. I opened a savings account named Future Home. I began to sleep deeper. My dreams no longer filled with running or scrambling for money. One afternoon, I realized I was no longer living in fear. 6 months later, Brian and I were married in a small chapel in Colorado Springs. My father stood at the podium. My daughter has never been useless. She is the heart of this family. I broke down in tears, not from pain but from finally being seen. As the wedding ended, I spoke a vow to myself. From now on, I will only keep around me those who know how to cherish me. And what about you? Have you ever had to speak a painful truth to your own family? Share your story in the comments. And if you see yourself in mine, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, so that others too can find the strength to stand up for themselves.